His name was Mark. He was not a foolish man. He worked with his hands from sunrise to sunset. He mended fences. He sold vegetables. He carried water for neighbors too weak to lift the buckets themselves. But every evening, when the sun melted into the hills, Mark would open his small metal box to count his earnings. And every evening, something was missing. Not the coins themselves. No. The coins were there, some of them, at least. What was missing was order. A record. A name. A number written down for where each shilling had gone. And that missing thing brought him to his knees in sorrow. Week after week. Month after month. A sorrow that did not shout. It whispered. And the whisper said, "You are losing what you should keep." Every morning, Mark walked 30 minutes to the village market. He knew the path by heart. He knew which stones would turn under his feet and which would hold. He sold his produce with skilled hands. His fingers knew the weight of a good tomato. His voice knew how to bargain gently without offending. But his mind refused to hold numbers. Grace was his best customer. She had known Mark since he was a boy running barefoot between the stalls. One morning, after counting her change twice, Grace looked at him softly and said, "Mark, write it down. Even a child can mark a stick. Even a fool can keep a notebook." Mark nodded. He reached up and touched the notebook in his pocket. He could feel the worn cover, the bent pages. But at the end of that day, and the next, the notebook stayed empty. And the sorrow returned like a bird that always finds its way home. One evening, Mark tried. He really tried. He sat on the cold floor of his small home. He lit the only candle he had. He took a torn piece of brown paper from his pocket, a paper that had once wrapped fish, and a pencil chewed down to a stub. He wrote, "Monday, 200. Then he stopped. Where did the rest go? Bread, 50. Medicine for his aging mother, 80. A debt he had promised to a neighbor, he could not remember how much. A child who had asked for help. He had given something, but what? The numbers swirled in his head like dust in the wind. He could not catch them. He could not name them. He threw the pencil down. Not in anger. In shame. The same shame that visited him every week like an unwanted relative who never ate, never spoke, only sat in the corner and watched him fail. One day, Mark walked far. Farther than the market. Farther than the path to his mother's house. He walked until the village was only a smudge behind him. Until he reached a river he had not visited since he was a boy. And there, sitting on a large gray stone, was old Elijah. Elijah had buried 2 children. He had outlived his wife by 12 years. And yet, when he greeted the sun each morning, he smiled, not because life was easy, but because he had learned something Mark had not. Mark sat down on the grass a few feet away. He did not speak first. He just stared at the water. The silence stretched like a rope between them. Finally, Mark whispered, so low that the river almost swallowed his words, "I lose what I earn. Not by theft. Not by waste. By forgetfulness. By chaos. And it eats me, Elijah. It eats me from the inside." Elijah did not rush. He picked up a small smooth stone from beside him. He turned it in his fingers. Then he dropped it into the water. "The stone does not blame the river for moving it," Elijah said, still looking at the ripples. "The stone does not weep because it sank. The stone is a stone. The river is the river." He turned to look at Mark for the first time. "You have been blaming yourself for not counting," Elijah said. "But counting is a skill. Not a morality. A skill can be learned. A wound of shame can be healed. Learn to count, Mark. Or the sorrow will remain until your hair is white like mine." The next Monday, Mark did something different. Something that cost him more than money. It cost him his pride. He walked to Grace's home. He knocked on her door. And when she opened it, he said, "Teach me. Not just to write numbers. To trust them. To make them my servants, not my judges." Grace did not laugh. She did not say, "I told you so." She simply nodded, tied her headscarf tighter, and led him to the community hall. For 2 hours, she taught him. Not mathematics. Honesty. "Write what comes in," she said. "Write what goes out. Do not guess. Do not hope. Write." Mark's hand shook at first. The pen felt like a tool he had no right to hold. But by the end of the morning, he had filled 3 pages. That evening, for the first time in years, he opened his metal box, and he knew exactly what was inside. Not because he remembered. Because he had recorded. He sat in silence. He did not weep in shame. He let a small, fragile peace enter his chest. Like a bird landing on a branch after a long storm. Mark never became a rich man. His metal box never overflowed. His clothes remained worn. His home remained small. But he stopped becoming a sorrowful one. He learned that money is a servant. A good servant. A useful servant. But a servant you ignore will mock you. A servant you refuse to count will become your master. A servant you account for, will honor you. The sorrow did not vanish overnight. It tried to return. But each time it crept back, Mark opened his notebook. He looked at the numbers. And the sorrow had nowhere to land. He was not free because he was rich. He was free because he was honest. With his money. With his memory. With himself. The scriptures speak clearly to Mark's sorrow. Proverbs says, "Be diligent to know the state of your flocks, and attend to your herds, for riches are not forever." And in Luke, Jesus asks, "For which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost?" The lesson is this: God does not bless disorder. He blesses faithful stewardship. Sorrow over lost earnings is often not a lack of money. It is a lack of accounting. Write it down. Track it. Your peace will rise where your records stand. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, share it with someone who struggles to keep track of what they earn. Subscribe for more stories of faith and wisdom. Remember, the wise store up choice food and olive oil, but a greedy fool devours all he has. Until next time, keep your accounts. Keep your peace.